Have you ever stopped to wonder why some people glide past their 70s with a spark still burning in their eyes, while others seem to fade, overtaken by the quiet weight of aging? Why do some bodies endure, while others slowly surrender, losing strength one piece at a time? The truth is harsh and rarely spoken out loud. Less than 1% of seniors over 70 can still perform 5 simple tasks most of us take for granted. Movements that once felt effortless, until the day they no longer are. And what makes it truly frightening is that this decline doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, silently. You don't notice until one morning you realize you're struggling to rise from a chair without your hands, or that a single flight of stairs feels like a mountain. But there's a pattern, a reason why this 1% still thrives when so many others have already given up. It's not luck. It's not even just good genetics. It comes down to a handful of habits, daily choices, and subtle signs that predict whether you'll stay strong, independent, and sharp well into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. In this video, you'll discover exactly what separates those rare few, the ones who keep their bodies and minds fully alive, from everyone else. You'll learn the 5 abilities that most seniors lose, and the secrets to protecting them while there's still time. If you're over 60, or if you care about facing the years ahead with strength and dignity, what you're about to hear could be life-changing, because by the end, it will be clear. The choices you make today will determine if you belong to that powerful 1% tomorrow. Comment number 1 below if you're ready to discover what only 1% of seniors can still do after 70. One of the earliest and most overlooked signs that the body is beginning to fail is the loss of grip strength. It sounds simple, almost trivial, but the truth is far more serious. Studies from the Journal of Gerontology reveal that declining hand strength is a powerful predictor of overall mortality. In other words, the weaker your grip, the shorter your life expectancy. For decades, Frank never gave it a second thought. After all, his hands were his tools. Strong, capable, calloused from years of labor. But after retirement, the heavy lifting stopped, and so did the quiet daily training his muscles once received. Little by little, Frank noticed changes. Jars that once opened with a twist now sat stubbornly sealed on his kitchen counter. Grocery bags felt heavier, forcing him to carry one at a time. He didn't talk about it, but every morning, pouring. His coffee became a silent test, one that left his hands trembling. Bob, on the other hand, understood the hidden danger. He read once that grip strength wasn't just about the hands, it was a reflection of his entire body's muscle health. So, without fanfare, he kept challenging himself, carrying his own groceries, opening every jar himself, squeezing stress balls as he read. And when his grandkids came running, Bob lifted them high without a second thought, their laughter ringing out like proof that his strength and his life still had years left to give. The science is undeniable. Researchers at the University of Michigan found that each 5-kilogram decrease in grip strength increases the risk of early death by up to 20%. This isn't about vanity. It's about survival. Weak grip means weak muscles. Weak muscles mean falls, fractures, and loss of independence. The difference between Frank and Bob wasn't luck. It was daily choices. One allowed his body to forget what strength felt like. The other reminded it. Every single day. If you're wondering what you can do today, the answer is simple. Never stop using your hands. Carry your groceries. Open your own jars. Do exercises that force your grip to work dead hangs, light weights, even gardening. Because the moment you stop challenging your strength is the moment your body starts counting down. There's a simple test doctors use that predicts, with eerie accuracy, how many years a person has left, how fast they walk. Gait speed. Your ability to walk briskly with purpose is now recognized by geriatric medicine as one of the most powerful markers of longevity. And the frightening part? Most people don't even notice when they start slowing down. Frank certainly didn't. He used to walk every day back and forth from the factory, up and down those concrete stairs without a second thought. But after retirement, his world shrank. The long walks turned into short drives. The trips to the store became deliveries. His legs, once strong from years of movement, began to betray him. Now, even the thought of walking 2 blocks leaves him anxious. The weight of his own body feels heavier. His knees ache. His breath shortens. And when he tries to keep pace with his grandkids, he gives up, waving them ahead with a forced smile. Bob knew better. Years ago, he read about a study published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, which found that seniors who could walk at least 1 meter per second were significantly more likely to live another decade. That simple fact became his compass. Bob never walked to exercise. He walked because it was his way of staying connected to life. Every morning, before the sun burned too hot, he laced up his shoes and walked, around the block, through the park, sometimes nowhere in particular. He felt his heart working, his lungs filling, his legs carrying him forward. And he never stopped. Today, that habit is the reason Bob still walks beside his grandkids, not behind them. He moves with ease, his pace steady, his back straight. His muscles remember what Franks have long forgotten, that walking isn't just transportation, it's survival. Science confirms what Bob instinctively knew. Walking speed is more predictive of survival than even age or chronic disease. A slow walker is at higher risk of falls, fractures, cognitive decline, and premature death. Not because of the pace itself, but because of what it reveals about the heart, the lungs, the muscles, and the brain. The good news? It's never too late to reclaim your stride. Start small, walk every day, push just a little further, a little faster, because the day you stop moving is the day your world begins to shrink. There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, that marks the beginning of the end for many people. It happens the day you realize you can no longer rise from a chair without pushing off with your hands. What seems like a small, harmless adjustment is, in truth, the body's silent cry for help. For Frank, it started subtly. He'd lean forward, brace his arms, and push himself up from the couch with a soft grunt. At first, he blamed the soft cushions or the old chair, but as months turned into years, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every movement required effort. Rising from bed, climbing out of the car, even getting off the toilet, all demanded his hands, his arms, his fading strength. And somewhere along the way, Frank stopped sitting on the floor altogether, because he knew deep down he might not get back up. Bob, however, made a different choice long before it was too late. He knew that lower body strength wasn't just about looking fit. It was the foundation of independence. So he trained for it, not in a gym, but in everyday life. He made a ritual of standing up from his chair without using his hands, repeating the movement until it became second nature. Squats, lunges, even getting up from the floor. These were not exercises for Bob. They were survival drills. The science leaves no room for doubt. Researchers at the British Medical Journal tracked thousands of older adults and found that those who couldn't stand up from a chair without their hands were twice as likely to die within the next 6 years. Why? Because weak legs mean weak. Balance and weak balance means falls, the #1 cause of injury and death in seniors. Bob doesn't fear falling because his body knows how to catch him. Frank, on the other hand, now lives with that quiet, gnawing fear that one wrong step, one misplaced foot, could take everything from him in an instant. But here's the truth. This is not about youth or age. It's about choices. And it's never too late to reclaim your strength. Start where you are. Sit and stand without your hands. Do it once, then twice, then 10 times. Because the moment you lose the ability to lift yourself is the moment you start losing your life. Memory loss doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. It creeps in, soft, quiet, almost forgivable. A missed appointment, a forgotten name. The feeling of walking into a room and wondering why you're there. For many, these moments pass, like clouds. But for some, they gather, until the sky darkens for good. Frank never imagined his mind would betray him. After all, he'd spent a lifetime solving problems, managing teams, running a household. He was sharp until he wasn't. It started small, forgetting where he left his glasses, repeating stories he swore he hadn't told before, struggling to recall what his daughter had just said over dinner. Frank laughed it off. Senior moments, he called them. But deep down, he felt the growing panic, because every lapse felt like a step closer to disappearing from his own life. Bob took a different path. He understood that memory, like muscle, weakens without use. So he trained it. Every single day. He read voraciously, debated ideas, challenged himself to remember names, faces, stories. He stayed curious. When his grandchildren visited, he listened, truly listened, and could recall their stories weeks later, surprising them with details they thought he'd forgotten. Science supports what Bob instinctively knew. A long-term study published in Neurology found that cognitive decline accelerates when social interaction and mental stimulation fade. The brain, like the body, is designed for use, and the price of neglect is steep. Those who drift into passive routines, who stop learning, who stop engaging, lose themselves piece by piece. Frank now lives in that quiet fog, unable to trust his memory, afraid of conversations he once loved. Bob, meanwhile, remains sharp. He remembers birthdays, childhood stories, even the headlines from this morning's paper. And that memory is more than a gift. It's a lifeline, connecting him to the world, to his family, to himself. The choice is cruel but simple. Engage or fade. You don't need crosswords or brain games. You need life. Conversations, books, laughter, new experiences. Every time you reach for a memory, you remind your brain what it was built to do. There's a silent epidemic stealing years from millions of seniors. And it's not heart disease or cancer. It's loneliness. Studies now show that social isolation can be as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Not because it attacks the body directly, but because it erodes the very will to live. Frank never thought he'd be lonely. He had a family, friends, colleagues, a full life. But retirement came, and with it, the slow unraveling of those connections. Friends moved away. Some passed on. Phone calls grew rare, visits even rarer. Frank found himself sitting in his living room, staring at the television, the silence louder than any words. Birthdays came and went. Holidays felt empty, and with each passing year, the walls seemed to close in. Bob refused that fate. He understood something few truly grasp. Humans are not meant to grow old alone. Purpose, the reason to wake up each morning, doesn't come from within. It's given to us by the people we love, the communities we build, the bonds we nurture. So Bob stayed active. He volunteered at the local library, joined a weekly book club, taught history classes at the community center. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because he knew that every conversation, every shared story, was another thread holding him to this world. Science confirms what Bob felt. In his bones. Research from Harvard's 80-year longitudinal study on adult development found that the single greatest predictor of health, happiness, and longevity wasn't wealth or even genetics. It was the quality of one's relationships. People who stayed connected lived longer, healthier, and far more fulfilling lives. Frank now drifts, a shadow in his own home, watching life through a screen. Bob, in contrast, is alive in every sense, surrounded by voices, faces, memories, and making new ones every day. His purpose didn't retire when he did. It grew. The lesson is simple, and it's urgent. Never stop building your tribe. Call your children, make new friends, join groups, clubs, anything that pulls you out of the quiet and into the noise of life. Because it is in those connections, messy, imperfect, beautiful, that we find the will to keep going. By now, you've seen the quiet but undeniable difference between two men who, on paper, had the same starting line, the same year of birth, the same opportunities, the same dreams of a long and meaningful life. Yet, somewhere along the road, their paths split. Frank's story is not rare. In fact, it is the most common. A man who spent his best years providing, building, working, only to arrive at the final stretch worn down, disconnected, and slowly fading. Not because he chose weakness, but because he underestimated the small, daily losses. The grip that weakens, the pace that slows, the memory that falters, the loneliness that settles in like dust. Bob's story is rarer, but it is not impossible. He made no heroic sacrifices, ran no marathons, chased no perfect diets. What he did was simpler, but far more powerful. He stayed awake to his life. He moved when it was easier to sit. He listened when it was easier to forget. He reached out when it was safer to stay silent. And those small choices, repeated day after day, became the difference between merely surviving and truly living. Science tells us what common sense already knows. The way we age is not written in stone. It is shaped by our habits, our relationships, our willingness to resist the slow drift toward decline. Strength can be rebuilt. Speed can return. Memory can sharpen. Loneliness can be broken. But none of it happens by accident. It happens when we choose every single day to fight for the life we still have. So now the question turns to you. Which path will you choose? The quiet, slow fade into the background, or the fierce, stubborn decision to live fully, right until the very end? Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about refusing to give up the things that keep you human. Your strength, your memories, your connections, your purpose. Because those are the things that define the 1% who still rise, walk, laugh, and truly live after 70. If you've made it this far, it means you're already different. You care. You're listening. You're ready. Now, I invite you to take the next step. Share your thoughts. Comment below if this made you think. like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what could be the most important lessons of your life, because the fight for your future starts now.